is like the showcase game. First time I ever saw it was on those pages. And I remember thinking back then that video games will never look better than this. And here we are today.
That's the one where he looked like
things.
claymation, right?
Right, yeah. And then the inside, it showed like the pictures. I was like, I can't believe these sprites, you know.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the NerdNest podcast. Today, it's just me and Russ, and we're going to talk about video game news. But first, I want to talk about, Russ had just put up a video this morning about the newest Ambernick, because Ambernick just keeps firing these things out. And, obviously go watch his video. But I thought we could take a second just to discuss this new thing. It's the update to the RG Cube. What's really different about this versus the Cube, Russ?
Well, the original Cube was an Android-based device, and it's like so Anbernic releases a new device every month, but they really only release two types of devices. They do the cheap ones with a certain chip and the more expensive ones with the more expensive chip. And so the original RG Cube came out with a more expensive chip, so it was like $180. And so then they made one that's basically with the cheap chip. And so this one is the $60 or $70 price point. And they made a couple changes, like they put the D-pad up top instead of on the analog stick. And then they made the triggers digital instead of analog. But other than that, it's basically the same thing, which is great because this is an awesome screen. It's a square 720 by 720, which is pretty cool.
When you play one-to-one screens, like what's your favorite systems to play on a one-to-one screen?
So it's interesting because there is no real, there's a couple like kind of obscure 1x1 display devices like back in the day, but there really isn't anything made for it other than like Pico 8, which Pico 8 is great on this, although we still need custom firmware to be able to get native Pico 8 on it. So I think that'll be great. But I like to actually take systems that were originally 4x3 and then squish them to 8x7. So that includes like Super Nintendo, NES, TurboGrafx. So that makes it a taller aspect ratio, but it's closer to a square. And it's just enough that it doesn't like mess up my like reality of playing these retro games. And so it's like not too squished for me, but it fills up almost the entire screen. And because this is 720 by 720, you can make it integer scaled with another trick called overscaling, which cuts off a couple pixels. So it just looks really cool, like almost squarish to play your Super Nintendo games. And so that's one of my favorites, definitely.
I almost always set the Super Nintendo and like Sega Genesis and stuff like that to be like 4x3. And I never try overscaling. I always either go, integer scaling, or I'll set it to 4x3 or whatever. And so that's something I'll probably mess around when I get my hands on that device. But anyway, so make sure that you guys check out Russ's video about that. What's the RG Cube double
Cube
X?
XX. Yeah, so they put X's at the end of it. And they put the X's after the word cube. So it's Cube X. But I refuse to do that. And so even in my review, I put a space there because I'm like, there has to be a space. You can't just say RG Cube XX like that. So I'm saying it wrong. It's even labeled wrong, but I just cannot deal with it. And so I put that space there.
Whenever I do a review of one of these devices and it has the XX in there, everybody else always says XX. I always say double X just because like the rhythm of saying XX feels off to me. Yeah. And a lot of people don't like it when I say double X. And I don't get why, but it's okay. We're all going to have to survive. Let's talk about the games that we've been playing, though. You and I both played the same game because Rich sent it to us this morning. He said, hey, guys, try this out. And I immediately installed it on my Steam Deck. And that game is called Ballionaire. And the reason Rich sent it to us is because I really liked this game that I had picked up called Peglin, where you are like this weird little gremlin guy, and it's basically Peggle. You drop stuff from the top, and it hits things as it goes down, and it's Peggle mixed with turn-based RPG, essentially. And I really like that, and he saw this, and he's like, oh, you got to check this out. This is kind of the same. There's no RPG elements to it, but you build your little pegboard by, you get like these, it's a roguelike where each turn you get like these 3 things to choose from, and you're like, oh, I want this thing, and I'm going to put it on the board here. And based on how it reacts when the ball hits it, is going to determine where you want to place it. And it seems like the game's got a ridiculous amount of replay value. So I spent probably 30 minutes this morning just messing around with it before I had a friend come over and help me out with like a record player and some speakers that I was picking up and I didn't know anything about. So I had to stop. But that game's really cool. Did you put any time into it, Russ?
Yeah, about 20 minutes. It's interesting, like, because it is, like you mentioned, it's roguelike. You kind of build your Peggle board. And so it starts out with just a couple randos, and then you add after every drop, you get to add another kind of, I don't know, peg thing that's added to the little peg part. And so then that does a different characteristic. Sometimes it'll give you extra money. Sometimes it'll make it like bounce up instead of down, or it'll latch onto the ball, all this kind of stuff. I got to be honest, I'm not really digging it.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I mean, that's fair.
The thing with me is that what I love Peggle. I never played Peglin. It's still on my wish list. I'm waiting for it to go on sale. But like the thing I like about Peggle is the satisfaction of completing the board, of like aiming for one and then hoping you get it. And you're like, yeah, I got that little orange thing. You know what I mean? This is kind of the opposite. You just kind of throw things there, and there's a lot of reading you can do to kind of figure out whether or not that strategy is going to work for you and stuff. But I like that chaos element, And I found that the longer I played it, yes, I was adding more and more chaos to it, but it's a build as opposed to a takeaway, and so that's kind of different for me. Like I like the satisfying like feel of like, it's like using a pressure washer. You're just kind of getting rid of stuff, and I like that feeling. That was very relaxing to me. Adding stuff and making it more and more and more was kind of the opposite of what I was going for. So I'll try it again, but that was the first thing I was like, oh, actually, this isn't as joyous as Peggle is to me.
Yeah, I will say that when you do start out and you just have like a couple of pieces, like the board is mostly blank, that's not the best way to, like, I almost feel like they should start you off with like half full of really, really weak ones, and then you could replace things as you go. And maybe later on because we're just playing the demo, later on in the game, maybe do that kind of thing. But like I got a game over. It took me a while to get a game over. The way that you get a game over is basically it's like, okay, this is your goal. Each thing that it bounces off, you get like, I don't know, I'll say $5 or something, right? And you have to hit $500 within a certain number of drops. And when you do that, then it's like, okay, good job. Now your new goal is 1,000, and then you get 1,000. It's like, okay, great. Now your new goal is 10,000. It just keeps on increasing, and you play for as long as you can until you run out, or until you run out of drops. You also have the ability to, I think, rewind, or like you can unplace some of the things. So if you decided, oh, I should put this over here because. So one example is I had put out a bunch of candles, and then I got a campfire, and I didn't have anything to activate the candles for a long time. So the candles were just all kind of over the place. And then I got a campfire, and then I was like, oh, what I should have done is put the campfire and then put the candles underneath it. So it'll light the ball on fire and then light the candles, which gives you more points. There's a lot of strategy to it, but I can totally see what you're saying about it's more satisfying to clear the board. It's like nobody's going out and buying Power Dirty Simulator. They're buying Power Wash Simulator to have that satisfaction of cleaning things off. But I think it's a cool game.
Yeah, no, they're definitely, like, I could see the merit, like when I started stacking things up, and basically accidentally, but I would stack things up in the right way, and then they would hit, and I would get like 10 times the amount of money I needed for that round. Like that was pretty satisfying, It does feel a bit like Balatro in that regard, like things just keep going and going and going. So I can see the merit to it, but I kind of came into it with a different mindset where I was just like, oh, this will be a fun, relaxing game with some, roguelike elements. I'm like, oh no, this is actually like a thinking game.
Yeah. Another game that I haven't played it for very long because if you watched last week's episode, my beard was out of control. So I went to my barber, and I was talking to him, and he said he'd been playing a game called Kingdom Two Crowns. And
Hmm.
I had never heard of this. So he was telling me about it. Basically, you're a king, you're on a horse. It's a side-scrolling game where you go back and forth, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, I got these kind of characters that earn gold, and then I got to take that gold and I got to invest it in either building walls to keep the greed out, which I think is like these little guys that steal your money, or I can invest it in adding archers or having more workers or invest in chopping down trees to expand my settlement. And you ride this horse back and forth instead of having a top down view, which is very interesting. Like I said, I haven't had a lot of time to play because this was like Friday that he told me about it, and we're recording this on Sunday. But I texted him. I was like, "Hey, what was the name of that game again?" And he goes, "Kingdom Two Crowns." And my wife and I were out someplace, and I had my phone, and I opened up the Steam app, and I searched for it, and it was already in my library. So I don't know where I got it. It must have been like part of a Humble Bundle or something like that. But I tried it out, and it's actually kind of cool. Again, super early, so I don't know much. Like I can't say much about like how it's going to play out, but it's pixelated, and the screen is like you about halfway up the screen is the ground, and then the king is riding back and forth on the ground, obviously, and then there's a big lake in front of you, and everything's reflected in the lake, and it just looks really cool. Like I like the art style of this game, and it's only like $4, so definitely check that out if you haven't yet, or at least I don't know if there's a demo available, but if there is, make sure that you check that out because that's a pretty cool game. Did you play any other games this week?
No, but I have played that game. I used to test with that game because it's really lightweight. And so I remember specifically I was using the original Odin, which had the ability to dual boot into a 32-bit version of Windows. And that was one of the games that would actually play on it. And so I remember like showing that off and stuff. So yeah, I do think that's a beautiful game. But yeah, other than 20 minutes with a Ballionaire, I just didn't. I was just working all week. I think I released 4 videos this week. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Working hard.
Yeah.
I guess the only other game that I had a chance to play this week was Astrobot again, and that's because they now have like their speed run levels that are out, and basically you turn on the game and a new galaxy appears. I don't know if it automatically updated or if they didn't even need to update it. I'm not sure because I didn't update it. It said like I hit the button and it was like, you already have the latest version. And I was like, okay, I haven't touched my PS5 in like a week and a half because I've been busy. So I'm not sure how that happened, but I was updated and I went into this new one. And on October 17th, there was a new level called Building Speed, where they give you like the rocket ship that goes on your back that shoots you forward really quick. And you can just keep speed running this level, and it's got a little timer. And I think I have in the show notes that my time is 44 seconds, but I was able to get it down to I think 40 seconds, and then I was like, that's pretty good. And then I looked at the leaderboards, and people are at like 28 seconds, and
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how they are finishing this level in 28 seconds. It feels like there's some kind of, I don't know, like a warp pipe hidden someplace that I haven't found yet, because I cannot imagine how people are getting through it that quick. But it's really fun, and I always love to like these little speedrunning things that it doesn't take you any time just to like. My worst time was 45 seconds, I think. And so like it doesn't even take you a minute to get through the level. So definitely check that out if you haven't yet, because A, that game is fantastic. B, super quick little speed run thing. And if you do, post your best time in the comments down below the like button, because I want to see what like the NerdNest is capable of. I want to hear what people are what numbers people are getting. I was the only person on my friends list that had actually done it. So
we got to get Bob on it. Bob is so good at speedrunning stuff. I'll watch him on Twitch sometimes. You know, he'll play like Mario Maker or like the NES Championship Edition. And he was playing like Mario 2. He doesn't really even know the game. And he was doing things that I didn't know were possible, you know. And he's one of those guys where I don't have the skill, but he'll basically be like, oh, and something accidentally happens and it's like faster. And he goes, oh, I'll just do that from now on. And then he just does that. You know what I mean? Like, I can't do that. Like, if there's some sort of thing that accidentally happens, it's because it was an accident and I probably can't recreate it. And so he's at a different level when it comes to those games. So I'd love to see his time too. I don't think he has the game, but that would be cool.
Yeah, I would like to see that. He does a lot of 2D stuff, and he uses one of those control boxes that's just like a flat slab with a bunch of buttons on it. And I don't understand how people can play games without a joystick, without a D-pad, just the big thing of buttons. Have you ever tried that with just the buttons?
Yeah, it's like playing with a keyboard. I can't do that. It's too much.
Yeah. Very weird. Anything else? So nothing else that you've been playing?
Nope.
All right, let's move on and talk about the news. I want to start with this story from Digital Foundry. I think it was last week or the week before we kind of made fun of Digital Foundry, not because we don't like Digital Foundry, but because, you know, we're looking at, oh, this game runs on this system at this many P and it runs on this system at this many P. And we're like, the only time it really matters is when you're zoomed in watching a Digital Foundry video. Well, they did one of those things where they always do, where they compared PSSR, which is PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution. It's their new upscaling thing. Well, that is built into the PS5 Pro, and they were playing Ratchet and Clank, which takes advantage of that. But one of the cool things is Ratchet and Clank on PC also supports FSR 3.1. So they were able to make a comparison of like for like, to see how does PSSR upscaling compare to FSR 3.1 upscaling. For those of you that don't know, FSR is AMD's solution to this and doesn't rely on specific hardware in order to implement, although AMD has said that that's something that they're going to be changing in the future. But essentially, what they found says that they still need to try it with more titles because right now they've only tried it with one, but it looks like PSSR solves a lot of the shortcomings of FSR, like the fizzle that is around characters when they're in motion. So basically, when characters are in motion and you're using FSR to do upscaling, you know, the system's making a bunch of guesses about what's going to be on the screen, and it makes things that are moving look kind of fuzzy, just a little bit, not enough that it's a big deal, but definitely something that somebody might notice. And they said you don't see that nearly as much on PSSR. They also said it's much better at accurately resolving particle effects, perhaps best evidenced by the confetti and Rift Apart's parade scene, which actually looks much busier with PSSR due to FSR phasing objects in and out of existence. So basically what they're saying is when you play this game and you use FSR, there's particle effects, and those particle effects sometimes just vanish and then show back up because the game or because FSR is struggling to figure out where this particle effect is supposed to be on screen. And PSSR apparently does it better. And I think that that's really interesting. You guys should definitely go watch the whole video. I've predicted on this show many times, or just on my videos many times, the idea that I think that upscaling is the next big, I don't want to say fight, but the next big advancement that we'll see in gaming, where games are able to run at lower resolutions and then get upscaled so that we get really good looking visuals and good frame rates. And I'm curious, Russ, when you are playing games on your PC, are you usually using that upscaling, or do you usually just leave it off and just play it by default?
Yeah, I usually do use it, unless it's really fizzly. That's the first time I've heard that term for this like phenomena, fizzling.
Same.
But it's the same. Like it makes sense, and so yeah, unless it's like the original God of War and like the first Spider-Man, those ones are pretty bad when you try to put FSR on, depending on your settings, and so. That one I usually don't, but what I do like to do is, I'll do 1440p, or I'll do 4K and then turn on FSR, so it's really rendering at 1440p instead. And that just kind of makes my little brain like happy, and so I'm good enough with that. And I'm in the same realm when it comes to these folks as well. Like, I remember back when, like, Xbox One and PS4 era and stuff, I remember they would say like, oh, this one runs better on this platform, this game or whatever, right? And I remember so many times I'd be playing a game like, I can't remember. Am I supposed to be enjoying this? Like, is this better or worse? Like, I can't remember, right? And it's just so dumb. Like, it's like, I like, it's just this thing in the back of my head. I'm like, should I be enjoying this much, or could it have been better? Like, it doesn't matter at the end of the day when you're playing a game. Like, I'm the guy who just gets, it takes me 5 minutes, but after that, I am just immersed in the actual gameplay and the story. I don't pay attention to any of that stuff. And so, like, I'm the same way when it comes to like, oh, this game's playing at 120 frames per second. It's amazing. And then I don't notice anymore, And so I'm probably the worst when it comes to that stuff. But yeah, for me, when it comes to like FSR and stuff, I'll turn it on when I'm just playing for myself, just to make sure it feels smooth, because I don't like the hitching feeling. That is something I'll notice. Otherwise, I don't really care.
That's fair. And I like what Digital Foundry does, but I never, like, it's funny that you're like, you almost just created that comic that we always see where there's people playing a game and then the guy comes in, he's like, stop having fun. You're not supposed to enjoy this thing. And you feel like you got that guy on your shoulder, I guess, right?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, it's just a little thing in the back of my mind, because I don't pay enough attention to care like which one's better or whatever. I've never bought like a pro version of any of the consoles either, so it's not enough to like make me spend money on it.
Yeah, I will say that I'm still thinking about picking up the PS5 Pro, and I'm the kind of person that I don't need that, because when I sit down to play, it doesn't take me that 5 minutes to just get immersed. Immediately, I just forget about the resolution and the frame rate. As long as it's a stable frame rate, most of the time I just don't care, and it's just fine. I remember I was playing Doom Eternal had come to Google Stadia, and Digital Foundry had made they made a video where they were talking about it's only 1800p. And I was like, that's really close to 2160. I don't know why anybody would care about that. But like, you should have seen so many people were like, oh my God, it's not 4K. And I was like, yeah, okay. If you could tell the difference between 1800p and 4K, then good for you. I am happy amazing. Being somebody who can't tell.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, the first game that I bought and played on my PS5 when I got it was Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and I remember sitting at my 27-inch 4K monitor is what I played it on, and the first parade scene, I was like, video games will never look better than this. I remember thinking that to myself. And so when I hear about the PS5 Pro and like, oh, it could be even better and stuff, there's a little piece of me it's like, oh, well, I could have that too, but then I have to remind myself, dude, just 3 years ago, you told yourself that video games will never look better than this. And save yourself $500 or whatever it is. And so that's probably the route I'll go.
Yeah, well, FOMO is a real thing, and it's really hard to deal with, especially when, you're always getting this new stuff coming out all of the time.
Especially when you got a podcast talking about it every week.
Yes, that's true too. Like, it also does make it easier to justify things, to like,
totally.
Do I need a PS5 Pro? No. But when I told my wife about it, and then I told her how much it was, she said, oh, that seems reasonable. And I was like, maybe I can buy it, because she wasn't going to get in the way. She wasn't going to say, do you really need that? I just flung my mouse across the desk. So I need that guy on my shoulder to say, hey, you don't need to spend this money on this thing. Like, I won't make that much money from a video about the PS5 Pro, especially since they're not sold out, or at least last time I looked, they weren't sold out. Although I will say I don't even remember where we were, but I happened to be looking at my phone, and I think it was Wario64 had tweeted out that Target had the limited edition ones, the ones that look like the first the PS1. Yeah. And I immediately clicked on it, and I went, and it was like, oh my God, they're in stock, but it was not the Pro. It was the PS5. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't want that.
They almost got you.
That almost got me. All right, let's move on. And there's this really interesting interview where basically we've got indie games, we've got AAA games, and Ubisoft wants you to think that we've got quadruple A games. I guess a lot of people would say that indie games are the A games, right? So there's something between A and AAA, and that's double A games. And there was this article over at GameIndustry.biz where they were lamenting the idea that everything in the industry right now is all about how are you going to monetize your game. And they talked to a bunch of bigwigs in the industry. Sean Layton was there, and they were talking about this stuff. And they said things like, today the entry cost for making a AAA game is in the triple digit millions. I think naturally risk tolerance drops, meaning if you're going to be spending that much money, you need to know that it's going to make money ahead of time. And because of that, that's why we continue to get sequels and copycats, because the people who with the money, or the people who I like to call spreadsheeters, where they just want to turn red numbers into black numbers. Like they look at these things and they say, okay, well, this is how much this game made. This is how much that game made. If you can't make that much money on this game, then we don't want to hear about it. And there were people who were like, okay, so what happens to the AA games that don't, like Rich? I wish Rich was here today but he couldn't, because he has this quote that he always says that I'm going to butcher, where he says something along the lines of, we want cheaper games that are shorter with crappier graphics more often. Something like that. He will, hopefully leave a comment below with the right quote. And that's the AA games. That's the things that don't get made anymore. And essentially, they said AA games are gone, and that is a threat to the ecosystem moving forward. And I was wondering how you felt about that, because we have the indie games, we have the A games, we definitely have AAA. Would you consider Astrobot to be AA? Because I feel like it is, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I feel like that is a AA game. I feel like the AA era was like the Xbox 360 for me in particular, or the PS3 era. Xbox One is all a blur because I just played Destiny the whole time on that console. But like before that, like I'm thinking of like The Darkness. I don't know if you ever played that on 360, or the Fear games, or like Enslaved. Like there were a bunch of games that were like up and coming, or just like mid-tier developers, not Ubisoft, not EA, none of those guys. It was just like kind of the smaller studios that made a name for themselves on the 360 by making these excellent games. And so I think we still are seeing that in the PC space. Maybe it's hard because a lot of them are A games that then kind of turn into AA games. But something like, what was that one that just came out? Hellfighters 2? Is that what it's called? I feel like that's a AA game. Not, what is it? Helldivers.
Helldivers.
Yeah.
2. Yes. Okay.
I knew what I was saying. I was like, that's not it, but it's close enough.
As soon as you said it, that's the only thing I could think of.
Right. But like games like that, where it's like people just put their heart and soul into the game, and not the backing of like a huge studio. That it's still there, just kind of fewer and further between. But I still see it, and that's where I find the most excitement as well. You get those big tentpole AAA games every once in a while, and sometimes they pay off, but I would rather people spend half the money or a quarter of the money and just try out new ideas and see where things go.
Yeah. There's an interesting quote in the article where somebody had in the article said something along the lines of, if when you're pitching your game to me, the first 2 pages are about the monetization structure, then you aren't trying to make a game, you're trying to make a profit. And I understand everybody who wants to make games is trying to make a profit. It's ridiculous to think that there are people out there doing it just for the art. Like, I'm sure that there are like individuals that are doing it just for the art. Like they come home after work and they pour their heart into it after hours on their own. But when you like have a company, that's not the goal. but they said, unless you are telling me this game doesn't exist and it needs to exist and here's why, then get out of here. And I think that there's too many I think I can't remember if it was last episode or a couple episodes ago, but we said that we felt like when we were growing up, the games industry was run by the people who made the games, and now it's run by the people who finance the games, and that I think we're worse off for it. And I feel like this article, which I will try and remember to link in the show notes, it really put a point on what we were talking about last week, or the week before, which is why I wanted to talk about it. But anything else to add to before we move on?
No, I think I really do think that it's just that the single A space that is really where the innovation happens, and then those guys will grow, and then their next game might be a double A or something. I'm thinking about so I mentioned Enslaved with Xbox 360. That was for me like a double A game. That was just amazing. One of my favorites on the console. And then that, developer went on to make the Hellblade games. And those are now AAA games. Like that's the amount of marketing campaign that Microsoft threw out for Senua's Sacrifice, or the second one. I forgot what it's called now. It's so much that it feels to me like a AAA game. The years it took to develop it and stuff. I still haven't played it. Part of that is because I still got to finish the first one. But part of it too is I don't know, when there's so much expectation on a game like that, it's a larger barrier to entry for me. I'd rather get something I can just jump into, and that's where AA games really shine for me. Oh, well.
Yeah. Let us know what games are you guys playing that you feel would qualify as AA, and why, down in the comments section, because I would love to hear about, just games that we are missing out on. Kind of like when Rich sent us to check out Ballionaire, which is it's Ballionaire, not billionaire. We're not pronouncing it wrong. That's just how it's said or spelled. All right. I almost pulled the trigger on this, and I still might, but I don't usually support Kickstarter stuff because I'm always nervous that I'm going to send my money away and never get the thing that I purchased. Kind of like, well, I won't get into that little handheld console thing that was by Palmer Luckey or whatever. I don't remember what it's called. I paid money. I haven't gotten it. They say it's coming. We'll see. Whatever. I don't believe them. But I don't know about you, Russ, but when I was growing up, I had a stack of EGMs that I would buy these whenever I came across them for a short period. My parents had gotten me a subscription to it. And EGM, for those of you who don't know, is Electronic Gaming Monthly. It was a monthly gaming magazine, and I would sit and just flip through the magazine and read all of the reviews about the games and read about the news articles that are coming out. And these are the games that are coming out. The first time I ever saw the TurboGrafx 16 was in an issue of EGM. And there's this really cool compendium book that you can get for $50 for a hardcover. It's on Kickstarter, so if you don't like the idea of Kickstarter, maybe just wait until it's definitely they had a goal of 35,000 and they hit 317,000 at this point, so it's definitely going to get made, and I'm sure it'll be in stores. This thing looks so cool, and it made me think about what were my favorite gaming magazines when I was a kid. One of them, obviously, was EGN. And then another one that I loved was Nintendo Power. And I thought, first off, are you interested in this at all? And secondly, what were your favorite gaming magazines?
So I am also close to pulling the trigger on it, but part of it is that I didn't have that intimate of a relationship with any video game magazine because I never had a subscription to any of them. I came from a family of 5 kids, and so we had a lot of mouths to feed, so we didn't have cool stuff like this. But I had friends on the bus that would have them. Mm-hmm. For example, I remember the first Nintendo Power, which had Mario 2 as the showcase game. First time I ever saw it was on those pages. And I remember thinking back then that video games will never look better than this. And here we are today.
That's the one where he looked like claymation, right?
Right, yeah. And then inside it showed the pictures. I was like, I can't believe these sprites, The EGM, I remember was for like, you know, obviously non-Nintendo stuff too, but there was like the up and coming stuff that was so interesting to me. So like Sega Saturn, Atari Jaguar, like I never saw those in real life. I just read, and 3DO, I just read about those on that in that magazine, like my friends, and it was, I don't know, it was a magical experience, but I don't have enough close tie to like want to relive that experience by getting the compendium. You know what I mean? Like I don't remember any articles other than those ones. You know, I don't remember the authors. I don't remember any of that kind of stuff. And so for me, partially, I feel like this is a celebration for people like you who had it and like would flip through for hours and hours and hours. For me, it's like kind of peeking in somebody else's party. And so, yeah, I just haven't. I mean, price is good though. $50 for the hardcover is not bad for this thing that looks super thick, which I think is pretty.
Yeah, cool. It's like I can't remember how many pages it says. It's I'm trying to see exactly. It's a 25. Oh no, that's not it. 320 pages, color, and it's like I think it's like a 12-inch book. So like it's a 9 by 12 book. That sounds awesome, and I definitely want to pick this up, but I just hate buying stuff on Kickstarter. Have you ever bought anything on Kickstarter?
I have. I've sometimes I've gotten burnt, but most of the time I haven't. You know, early days Kickstarter, I definitely got burnt. But the thing with me too is that I'm kind of averse to physical books at this point because military, you know, the background and whatnot. Like I moved so many times and hauling those dang books around. At one point, like 2 tours ago, I got rid of everything but my very treasured favorites. And I don't think that. Like there are books that I gave away that are more important to me than this compendium. And so it's my other line of thinking is like, if I'm going to buy a book, I'll go buy one of those ones that I got rid of. You know what I mean? And so just not quite at that threshold for me.
Well, for $15, not that I'm trying to sell you on it, but for $15, you can get a PDF and then you can look at it on your iPad if you want. I don't have an iPad. I gave it to my wife when I got my laptop because I didn't need it anymore. So I guess it's the physical book for me if I decide to go with it. All right. Speaking of physical, if you have your old N64 games laying around, have I got a device that looks really good for you? Because this thing looks fantastic. It looks so good. It is. We talked about this when it first got announced, but we didn't know anything about it. And well, now we know more about it. It is the Analogue 3D, and it plays the entire N64 collection off of real carts. So you go to like a thrift store, you buy an N64 cart, you know, Smash Brothers, slap it in there, plays it at 4K up-resed. You know, it comes with a really nice looking controller made by 8-Bit Dough. This thing looks fantastic, and it goes on pre-order. Well, we're recording this on Sunday. It by the time you see this, it's probably already up for pre-order, and it's from Analogue, which is a bad thing, I think, because they're not going to make enough. It's going to sell out instantaneously, even though it's $250. And I want this thing so bad, but I am going to be at work with students in front of me when it goes for sale, and I'm not going to be able to buy it. And that makes me real sad because this thing looks cool as hell. What do you think about this thing, Russ?
So one point of clarification, it doesn't come with a controller. You got to buy that separately. But yeah, that's the only note. But so it's $250, and I think that I'm the biggest Analogue critic probably on the whole podcast, you know. But the thing with me is that I actually think this is actually a pretty good deal if you don't already have a Nintendo 64 and controllers and whatnot. If you were just like, say you had a bunch of cartridges or whatever, I've got a few for testing and whatnot, but I don't own a console. If you were to buy a nice Nintendo 64, get the 4K hookups and all that kind of stuff, you're looking at upwards of $250, if not more, to get all those setups and to get nice controllers for it and whatnot. So the idea that this is almost price parity with trying to recreate that experience with original hardware is pretty awesome. You know, I think that actually is a good price. And I haven't looked too much into it, but if it has like a micro SD card slot, and then eventually people will be able to port cores to it, like they did with the Analog Pocket and with some of the other retro handheld or retro consoles, that you could play also Super Nintendo and stuff like that on there, that would be like almost a must buy for me. It'd be like a tabletop console that yes, it'll only hold Nintendo 64 cartridges, but if you could play the other stuff on it too, that would be pretty amazing. I've been, back here you can see I've got my Analog Pocket now over by my question mark block there. So that has been hooked up to my CRT for the past month or so. Ever since I did my updated review of the Analog Pocket, I now have that looped into my CRT. And I gotta say, like, I love the Analog Pocket docked experience. Like the menu itself, navigating through the games, is really kind of just text-based and a little bit clunky, but just the way the games just work perfectly, like no issues, scaling's all correct, all the controls are correct. Like I will stand right there in front of the TV, and then I will get my little 8-bit do joystick thing, and I'll just stand there and I'll just play for a little bit, or I'll sit on a stool or whatever, and I'll just play looking at my CRT because it's that fun of an experience. And previously, when I had my original hardware and everything hooked up, it was such a pain to get it all hooked up. And so I would love for the Analog 3D to be more expansive than Nintendo 64, but if somebody was just to buy a Nintendo 64 off the street, or they're looking to kind of recreate that, this might be actually a pretty good buy, even when you consider the cost price, because it's actually not that bad.
No, I don't think it's overpriced. I do think it's expensive. Like I understand, like
Right.
$250 is a lot of money, but I don't think it's overpriced. I think that because it's the same price as the Analog Pocket. I think the Analog Pocket is overpriced. I don't think that this is overpriced.
Yeah, and I would love to see a year from now, probably when we have more access. Well, I want to say that probably we will have easier access to this console, but if it's like their other consoles, which just never got restocked, then we might be in like a whole world of trouble. But if they make this like plentiful, and they also add the cores to it, like it's going to be an even better deal a year from now if it's available.
Are you going to be sitting there when the countdown timer hits, and are you going to be clicking that button?
No.
No?
I mean, I literally have like 4 Nintendo 64 cartridges, and half of them are Japanese. Like, and even here, trying to buy a Nintendo 64 cartridge here in Hawaii, they are expensive. The American ones. I can find the Japanese ones for cheap, but I don't read Japanese, so it makes it a little bit harder for me.
Yeah, see, I think that like if I had one of these, then I would go to the thrift shops and I would be like scouring for, oh, look, we got a copy of Smash Brothers, or oh, look, we got a copy of Mario 64. I would probably pick up like the games that I would play, that I would definitely 100% go out and buy for this would be the Zelda games, Mario 64, Blast Core, and then anything that was multiplayer and fun, because I think that this would be just a fantastic system to have sitting under your TV. Hey everybody, let's play some Nintendo 64 games, especially with you'd have to buy 4 of those 8-bit controllers, but those controllers look really good. I wouldn't want to use the N64 controllers because they're terrible. Not that Russ knows, because Russ never played the N64.
So here's the thing, though. I did try it when I went to Germany. We had a Mario Kart tournament, and so we started with GameCube, and I like won my match for that, and so I was in the semifinals, which was on the Nintendo 64, and with original console, original controllers on a CRT, and they had it all staged because they didn't want me to win, because I was the one handing out the prizes, which were handhelds of mine that I was trying to get rid of. And so they're like, we don't want you to win, so we're going to and I didn't want to win either, So they said, we're going to give you the worst controller. This one's got all sorts of input issues and stuff. And so the stick didn't work correctly, and one of the buttons didn't work. And they're like, you're going to use this one. So that was my first experience with the Nintendo 64 controller, was one that was broken. And so it did not paint a good picture in my mind, but it was comfortable. Like, I still kind of enjoyed it. The analog stick, though, was so messed up, the one that I was using. And so it was just really a terrible experience. But yeah, I at least now can say that I've tried it. And I mentioned, on the podcast before, but like this era, Nintendo 64 was when I was like knee deep in like sports and girls at that point. And so I just wasn't playing video games. And so, yeah, I don't have that, like, I don't have the same memories to the point to motivate me to go and wait and buy this thing at the moment it picks up. And I think if I even made a review on it, I would give it a disservice because I don't have those memories either.
Well, actually, I think that would make it so that you could be more objective, because you wouldn't be playing with rose tinted glasses. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, sure. But half the allure of this is those rose tinted glasses. You know what I mean? Like, that's part of it. So
Oh yeah, I mean that's why I want it. I want it because I'm nostalgic for the N64. I remember when I had first gotten out of the army, I had moved in with my brother and his wife, and we had another roommate, and we all worked at Applebee's, and we would come home after work, and we would sit down and have a party, and then we would play Mario Kart. And we would just, the four of us would sit there and have an absolute blast playing that game. And I still have really good memory of playing through the end of Ocarina of Time, and like my brother and I passing the controller back and forth, taking turns because, oh shoot, I died at the end of the game. You're like running down a tower or whatever. I can't remember exactly, but you're running down a tower and oh, I died. Okay, here, I'll pass it off to you. Now we got to fight Ganon again. Okay, we got past that. Now let's run down the thing. Oh no, and we kept passing it back and forth. And his wife came home from, I think she had gone to see Phantom of the Opera with a friend of hers, and when she walked in the door, he and I are jumping up and down in the living room celebrating because we had finished the game, and we were just so excited about it. So I have a lot of nostalgia for this, but I can't get it because it's going to be sold out instantaneously. So anyway, with Analog, just restock. After you sell out, restock them because I will give you money. All right. Kerry, who couldn't be here today, he tweeted out this comment, and I was 100% with him right up until somebody replied to him, and I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. He said, you shouldn't need to press a button to sprint if you have analog sticks. And I was like, yes, you're 100% right. And then Questing Aimlessly said, I agree, but only if the game doesn't have some kind of stamina management system. Imagine playing Dark Souls and you find yourself out of stamina because you keep sprinting by accident. And it got me thinking about game mechanics that don't make sense. So, for example, having to hold, like when you're playing Mario 64, holding down the B button to run faster, or not Mario 64, but every Mario game since Mario 64, right, you have a B button to run faster, and we're playing it on a stick. And there's no reason for that. It makes a lot of sense. And I was wondering, just throwing this at you or asking chat to, leave a comment in the thing down below. What are some game mechanics that are just kind of holdovers that don't make sense anymore? What do you think? Anything that jumps to mind?
Ooh, I was just playing Halo. I forgot to mention this, but I was playing Halo 3 yesterday. I'm working on the GPT Duo laptop, which has got two screens, and you can fold them over. And so you can have two screens like this, like a tent pole kind of thing. And so I was playing with my nephew as part of the review, where we were both playing the same, like two different instances of Halo 3 co-op together, basically, on the same laptop. So he's got a screen, I got a screen.
So you're running the emulator twice?
You're running the game twice using an app called, I forgot what it's called, Fusion Co-op or something like that. And so it allows you to basically spoof I'm playing my Steam game, Master Chief or whatever, but it is playing both of them, two different screens, two different players, and then you set up a LAN party basically, and then you're playing against each other with LAN. And so we just did co-op, and the controls on that, holy smokes, like it's only been 15, 16 years or whatever, but like the button configurations for, the sprinting and each of the mechanics, melee and whatnot, it was just so weird because I had it on the original control scheme. And the thing that just I kept coming back to was that melee button. Like, I don't know, we used to have to take our thumbs off the joystick to go and press the B button to melee, and that just never felt natural to me. Now you click the right stick for the most part, and I think that's a little bit better because then you're kind of keeping it. So that's one where I still feel like it's still not perfect. I don't know what we need, like a back bumper that's dedicated to that. There's got to be some other way to do a melee better, like when playing a first-person shooter game, and I just haven't thought of it yet. So if somebody's got an idea in chat, I'd love to hear that. Maybe using the right analog stick to go back and forward really quickly, like you can do the motion, like something that feels a little bit more natural. That's one mechanic where that was really jarring for me. I was trying to figure out the controls, and it was the melee that was screwing me up the most.
I would really like to have a game where, I mean, we've where instead of using flicking the stick back and forth, where you shove the controller because there's a gyro in it, and you're like, get off of me. Like that would be really cool. My experience with Halo is really strange because I didn't have the original Xbox, and when the Xbox 360 came out, I didn't pick up Halo. I picked up Orange Box, and that was the game that I put stupid amounts of time in before my Xbox went Red Ring of Death, or I gave it away to my brother-in-law. I can't remember which one happened, but it doesn't matter. So fast forward to whatever year Halo Infinite came out, and it was about to come out. I ended up picking up Master Chief Collection, and I was playing through that. And as I was playing it, I was like, like you pick up the sniper rifle, and you have to, in order to zoom in, you have to click the stick. And I'm like, oh, this is awful. Whoever thought that this was a good control scheme?
Yeah.
Like we have so many good control schemes for shooters, but you forget that they slowly morphed into that version of control schemes for shooters over time.
Yeah.
Then you go back to the original ones and you're like, ugh, this is real bad on a controller.
And if you get hit while zooming, you immediately go out of zoom. And so like that all the way up through Halo 3 that happened. And that was so annoying too. It was like, nowadays you aim down the sights, you hold onto that left trigger, it's going to stay aimed, even if you're getting hit, and that seems like a more realistic thing as opposed to the moment that you get hit, all of a sudden you're just disoriented. And so, it's always been messed up with the Halo controls. They got it eventually by Halo 4. I feel like it was a more modern scheme. But before that, oh man, it was rough.
It was. All right, so we've got some games that are coming up this week. We've got Fae Farm, Fear the Spotlight, Terminator Survivors, Windblown, Romancing the Saga 2, Yakuza Kiwami, Ys X Nordies, Sonic X Shadow Generations, and Call of Duty Black Ops 6. None of these games are particularly exciting or interesting to me. My soon-to-be son-in-law he said, try out Call of Duty. I installed it, and then he was here and he was like, no, you installed the wrong part. You got to, because he was trying to get me to install the multiplayer or whatever so we could play. And I had installed the wrong stuff or whatever. So then he did whatever it is that he was doing. And I haven't picked it up since he set it up right for me, because I had picked up the wrong one, because I've never played a Call of Duty game. Those are just not my jam. I've never been interested in them. I prefer shooters that are completely unrealistic, and I know that the Call of Duty games are always oh, I saw this guy and I shot at him and that guy is dead instantaneously because that's how friggin' bullets work. Oh, okay. Well, then I'm not going to play that game because I want to be able to react to somebody shooting me from far away. I see my health go down and I have time to turn around and take care of them or whatever. But
take a med pack.
Right. Drink a potion, something. But anyway, those are the games that are coming out this week. Nothing that I'm particularly interested in. Is there anything on the list that you're excited about?
Not for this list, but I think something we forgot to mention is Spider-Man 2 is coming to PC. They announced
Oh my God.
Right?
Yes, that was in the show notes. I completely scrolled right past it. Talk about that.
So we've talked about Spider-Man and me, I don't know how many times, but right. I'm still in Spider-Man 1. I'm still 20% into the game, and I'm the same place on PS4 and on PC. And I just keep going back and forth. Which one am I going to finish? Because I do Spider-Man 2 is the one I want to play. I want to play Miles Morales too, but Spider-Man 2 with Venom and stuff. And I've seen some of that footage. I'm that is the kind of game I want to play. And I've been kind of holding off because I was do I play it on PS4 so I can play it on, PS5, that kind of thing. Now this has made up my mind. I'm going to just go all in PC, because by the time I finish those first two, then Spider-Man 2 will probably be out, which I think is early next year. So that's a perfect
January.
setup for me. Now, and again, I think this is just a product of being on this podcast all the time. Now I'm thinking, well, the PS5 Pro version will probably run a lot better because they've got that super FSR, you know what I mean? So now I'm already thinking like, oh gosh, that might be the best way to play the game. And so I'm going to hold off on that part. I'm just going to do the PC thing. But spending $600+ to get a better Spider-Man 2 experience is ridiculous. I can just buy it for $60, you know, when it comes out on PC. So I'll probably just do that.
And so, okay, it comes out in about 3 months. January 30th, 2025. Are you setting like a goal for yourself to finish it? Like, are you gonna could you update us along the way? Like, oh, okay, I played it for 2 hours this week and I got 3 backpacks or whatever.
I know. Yeah, I should. I mean, I just need to take a couple long flights. That's all I need with my RG LAX, and I'll get it done, you know. But I don't have any trips coming up until CES in January. So maybe, that's not even that long of a flight anyways, like 6 hours. So yeah, I just need to hunker down. I'm not going to make any commitments, you know, because I'm terrible at that, and that's just going to make me not do it. But yes, that's my goal. Is I want to finish those 2 before the second one comes out.
I need to. I'll just play it on PS5 because my son has it on PS5 and he may even have like the disc version. So I may borrow that from him so that I can play it. Because I canceled my PS Plus subscription and because I just wasn't playing any of those games. And that was one of the games that I had played a little bit because of the PS Plus subscription. And like, I played the beginning a couple of times. Like I get in there and I go up and I fight against Fisk at the end of basically the tutorial. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I start swinging around the world and I'm like, there's too much crap on my map. I don't know what to do. I can't be bothered with this. I'm just going to go play something else where I don't have to make any decisions. I just sit down and play a game without really having to think. And my son loves Spider-Man, like the game. Like he says how great it is. And everybody who I've ever spoken to says that the first one is just a fantastic experience. And Miles Morales is also really short, which is great because I don't have an attention span. So I think that like, I want to play these games, but there's something about them that doesn't grab me, and I wish that it did. But with Spider-Man 2 coming out on PC in January next year, that's very interesting for a lot of people out there that don't want to play on a PlayStation, or they have a beefy computer that they're going to be able to play it on. Now, I know that there's going to be some people that are worried about whether or not it's going to work on the Steam Deck. I wouldn't worry about that. Rich has said that God of War Ragnarok runs, it like the PlayStation login issue doesn't really get in the way when you're playing on Steam Deck. So I don't think that that's really going to be an issue. But there's something there that's telling me, you don't need to play this right now. And whatever it is, it always wins. I can't make myself, play it.
Yeah, I had the same experience with Spider-Man. It was like I played through the tutorial and they're like, okay, and now here's the whole world. And I was like, turn it off. Like I don't want Grand Theft Auto in my Spider-Man game, like it's just too much. And so, but I did find that there was enough, like I did go through and like get all of the towers and I think the backpacks or whatever, like so that I unlocked the whole map, because that was just kind of fun exploration. I was just kind of learning the moves and stuff. So I would recommend that, as soon as you get the world unlocked like that, then just go and do that. And so you're just kind of not advancing the storyline, but just unlocking everything. It feels almost like, I don't know if you ever played Crackdown, but it kind of feels like that, where the longer you play it, the better and more skilled your character gets. And so you get all those agility points and stuff. And so that's kind of what it reminded me of. And I did enjoy that like half hour or an hour that I spent doing that.
I heard nothing but great things about the story in both, or in all 3 of the games, which is why there's a lot of people that are upset that there's not going to be any more DLC coming for Spider-Man 2. So that doesn't affect me. I didn't even play the first one. I didn't play the second one. I didn't play the third one. So I whatever, doesn't bother me. But there's a lot of people out there that were like, they were expecting to get like this character named the Beetle, which I'd never heard of. I'm not like, I like the Marvel movies. I don't know anything about the comics really. So like people were excited about that. It's gone. It's not happening anymore. We don't know why it's not happening. Of course, it also wasn't announced that it was happening. That was part of like the Insomniac leaks that had happened. Like that, maybe this is stuff that they were working on, but I can understand why people are sad about that. But one thing that you don't have to be sad about is this code that I'm going to put on the bottom of the screen right here. It is basically a 1-year subscription to Nintendo Switch Online. It was sent to me by Sparky9913. And just so you know, it's for new members. So if you already have Nintendo Switch Online, it's not going to do anything for you. But if you don't, you can get a year using that code that's on the screen right now. And thanks to Sparky for sending that in. I had some other people send in some other codes that I'm going to save for future episodes. But Russ, what are you working on for your next upcoming videos and stuff?
So I'm a clean slate right now. I'm kind of tired of reviewing cheap handhelds because I did several of them over the past couple weeks. And so I do have some in the stack. I'm going to leave those for a bit. I think I might work on the ROG Ally X. And so that might be the next video. I've got a bunch of stuff that I bought for it, accessories, grips, and whatnot. I've got them all in the mail now. And so I'm just like, I'm ready to test them all out and say, okay, this one improves the ergonomics. This one does not. That's like my main complaint about the Ally X. And so we'll see. I don't expect that to be like a gangbusters video, but hopefully it'll help people who have the device. And then there's a couple neat software tweaks I've done as well, including like a special script that will boot me, because I'm dual booting it with Bazite and Windows. So I've got a special script that will show up as a Steam game in Bazite. And then when I click on it, it boots me into Windows.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I made like fancy artwork for it. And so it just looks like, oh, do I want to play any of these games or do I want to play Windows? And I can just choose that right then and there. And it's kind of cool.
That's really
so I'm gonna show
cool.
that stuff off. Yeah.
Yeah. I have my ROG Ally X is currently hooked up to my arcade cabinet, and I have a Ugreen one of those dock things that happen to have like an audio headphone jack, which was needed for this because I have a speaker in my arcade cabinet, and so the speaker is running into that, and then I just yanked out the cord that came with the Ugreen one and got a really long USB-C fast USB-C cord. And so I've got a shelf next to my arcade cabinet, and so whenever I want to play an arcade game, I just put because I have like the 4 terabyte drive in the in the Ally X, so I just I plug it in there, and then I've currently have it in the D brand case that has a little kickstand too, so it just sits on my shelf over there vertically. Plug the cord in, and bam, I can play arcade games on my old Asteroids Deluxe arcade cabinet, and I've been playing way more emulation games because of that. It's awesome. So fun playing on on arcade controls instead of controls with your thumbs. But that's just for me. But that's going to do it for us today here on the NerdNest podcast. You guys could have been anywhere, but you decided to hang out with me and Russ for an hour, and I appreciate that. And I hope that you all have a fantastic day. Stay rad, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.